So, Martin, barely a week after Twitter's launched its ad API, an interface that allows advertisers and marketers to create and manage ad campaigns, I believe you've told Harvard Business Review in a recent interview that you do not think Twitter is an effective advertising medium at all. What prompted you to make that observation?
You see Twitter's phenomenal success around the Olympic Games. I think it was the most successful medium. We were certainly analysing Twitter feeds around the games, and it was the most successful. And relatively, I think Facebook and Google were outdistanced in a way by what Twitter achieved. But I think you have to look at each of these media, and they are the new media. They're not technology companies. They're the new media companies masquerading as technology companies. And Google has its 5 legs. It has search, it has display, it has video, it has social, it has mobile, and is very effective at all of them. And we invested something like $2 billion with Google last year out of $72 billion, and that was up from $1.6 billion the year before. And our biggest media owner relationship is probably around $2.5 billion in legacy media, global media, and not growing as fast. So Google could, within a very short order, be the biggest media owner that we work with. But it's much more broadly based than either Facebook, which is very focused on social, and increasingly coming to mobile. But to my mind, Facebook is a branding medium. It's not an advertising medium. And I was talking to a client here in Singapore today who shares that view, and that what Facebook should really do is relax a little bit. It's the pressure of the IPO, I think, to some extent. You read the S1, and Mark Zuckerberg almost doesn't want to go public. It's going public for other reasons. And they are the biggest nation or the third biggest nation on the planet, after China and India, and they probably will be the biggest nation on the planet. So they've done an incredible job, but it is a branding mechanism, not an advertising mechanism. And search is very different. 80-90% of all car purchases in America use search at some stage. You want to buy a car, you might want to buy a Ford or whatever it happens to be, but you know where you're going and you know what your purchase destination is. Branding, social networks are what they say they are. They're about social conversations, and you interrupt a social conversation or a social network with a commercial message at your peril.
On another note, many congratulations on WPP's phenomenal rise in its pre-tax profits. I believe it rose by 8.3% to a whopping £1.1 billion this year, and revenues that jumped 3.5%. What contributed to these rise in profits for the second year in a row, and which areas have you seen the most growth in?
Well, we had a record year in 2012, which eclipsed a record year in 2011. As to why we did it, I did say, as we discussed before, we got there ugly. But the answer is we had a decent revenue growth towards the upper end of the industry, 3% or 2.9%. So that was number one. We supplemented that with acquisitions. Currency was against us, and that didn't help us. But we managed our business well. We balanced revenues and staff costs, not so much at the beginning of the year, but as we went through the year, particularly in Q3 and Q4, and it leaves us very well balanced, I think, for 2013. So I think the key points, we were top of the new business tables by quite a long way. So that will kick in as we go through 2013. And there's a lot going on in new business pitches at the moment. And we've been very successful in team pitches, particularly recently in the pharmaceutical industry, where we've seen both Johnson & Johnson and Pfizer consolidate their businesses, in J&J's case with 2 holding companies, and with Pfizer's case with 3 holding companies, and in both cases we are one of those companies. So we've made some big inroads into those consolidations, and there's a whole slew of other pitches going on at the moment, which we're participating in, and which I think offer tremendous opportunities. So I think the answer to the question about how we did in 2012 is very much built around organic growth, supplemented by acquisition growth, new business wins, net new business wins, and last but not least, managing our business in a very effective way.
Right, but WPP's public relations division hasn't fared too well, with a drop in like-for-like revenues of 1%. As a custom business, is the PR industry still bearing the brunt of pressure on discretionary spends in mature markets especially?
Well, I think that all custom businesses, we saw that in our custom research business. We've seen it in our public relations, public affairs business, and to some extent our branding and identity in healthcare businesses, where you have discretionary spending in the slow growth markets, not the fast growth markets, but the slow growth markets. So the US, the UK, France, Italy, Spain, Germany. Germany, UK, maybe a little bit, we did well in the UK, but a little bit less. Those are the sort of bookends of Europe, which are doing slightly better. But there's no doubt that custom spending does come under pressure. I saw Nielsen's results. They were pointing to a -8, -9 in custom research in the mature market. So it's tough where clients are faced with declines in capacity or constraints on capacity. So what you have really is clients doing two things: investing in the fast growth markets, investing in capacity and building brands behind that capacity, and in the slow growth markets, constraining capacity or even cutting capacity, and maybe investing in brand a little bit to maintain or increase market share. So you've got that sort of double positive whammy for us, but it's of a moderate overall scale. And what we've seen, of course, in the last couple of years is the worldwide growth rate come off. I mean, there was a big rebound from the recession, of the deep recession of 2009. So 2010 was not a dead cat bounce, but it was a cat bounce, a live cat bounce. And then 2011 got a little bit stronger, and 2012 got a little bit stronger. But taking everything into consideration, we had 2 record years in succession, and I have absolutely no complaints.
No complaints with revenues. I mean, you're one of the few global CEOs who would make that statement. Well, on that note, thank you so very much for joining us, Martin.